You thought five? Five signings was enough? No. Six? No. 7? Nope. 8? Maybe 9. My goodness me, what a window. This is today's Arsenal transfer show. Sorry, Spurs. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. And I hope that your start to your week has been very good indeed. It's my day off. It's golf day, as you can see. Going to very much enjoy going for a round a little bit later on this morning, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying just a nice day off. So if you don't see me responding with an article to any transfer news or breaking any stories today, you know the reason why. It's my day off and I'm going to genuinely try and enjoy it, because this summer on my days off, the amount of times I've worked on a day off this summer has been frankly a joke. So I'm really going to try and take this one. After today's show is finished, I'm going to try and enjoy this day off. But good morning to you all in the chat box. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Jay in the chat box. We've got Paul and Kirill and Brendan. We've got Julian and Oslo. We've got Mark and Earl and Cleo and Mark and Simple Unity and Paul and Kirill. We've got Sid and Oslo and Nifty Legend. We've got Dom Stomp in the chat. We've got Alvin. We've got Mike in the chat. Sweating Merlot. Jay and Alvin as well. Brian. We've got Z. We've got Star as well in the chat. We've got plenty of you listening. If you could be ever so kind to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show, that also would be hugely appreciated. Bakary Lasagna has been a member with us now for 32 months. Absolutely incredible. Cannot quite believe that we've had members as long as Bakary Lasagna, who have been members for as long, not as long like person. Let's stop there. Been as long, but been here so long, I got sent off for time wasting, is the comment, which I think is probably fair as well. But no, you're still here, and so are all of our members. And thank you, and welcome to our brand new members, of course, as well, who've been joining us, of course, throughout the summer. It is greatly appreciated, you all listening and all being here. Thank you to you all for tuning in, and I look forward, of course, to discussing plenty of today's stories and more as the window is in now its final 6 days. 6 more days. 6 more transfers? Maybe. Don't rule it out. Right, let's jump into today's stories, shall we? Begin with yesterday evening's utter horrendous. It's just horrendous. It was a great game. An amazing game. A game that, quite frankly, should not have gone the way that it did. It simply should not have. It should have been Newcastle done, gone, dead and buried, battered. But it wasn't. And they fought back from 2 goals down with 10 men, only to throw it all away. You know, you can be personally pleased. My missus last night was going, "Oh, you got to be happy for him. You got to be happy. He's 16 years of age. You know, what a moment for him. You know, you got to be happy." And I was like, yeah, really happy. So jubilant that he has scored on his debut. I'm so glad for him. Inside, I'm like, and I'm so angry at Newcastle. You fought from, you know, there were so many stupid moments in this game from Newcastle. Anthony Gordon, of course, what an absolute fool. Getting sent off the way that he did. Getting sent off like that is just inexcusable. Utterly inexcusable. And I cannot help but not, in some ways, I don't feel sorry for them. I don't feel sorry for Newcastle at all. Obviously, there was a lot of benefit for Newcastle getting something from this game, but I don't feel sorry for them. I just don't. going 2-0 down with 10 men and then getting it back to 2-2 with injury time remaining. You've got 10 men against the champions and you're fighting with every fibre of your being to get a third. Are you nuts? If you can't win, don't lose. Eddie Howe's managerial sensibility should be questioned here, because at 2-2, you've got it back to 2-2. You're into added time. I don't care how much added time there was. There was a lot of added time needed. People can moan about it being 11 minutes. There was loads of players down receiving treatment for extended periods of time. It probably was. It probably was that. So just please understand that that is not something to complain about. There are things to complain about in the game. I don't care how long the additional time was. I don't care. I couldn't give, Newcastle should take the 2 and then sit, absorb, bring on whoever. Well, I don't think they could, but just sit everybody behind the ball and absorb that pressure. To lose that game after all that work is just disgusting, quite frankly. It's just disgusting. Disgusting behaviour. And I mean, what happens next for Newcastle? I don't know. Anyway, there was a couple of points in the game I wanted to mention. Is this a red card challenge for you? Listeners, of course, that are on audio platforms. Gravenberch, I think it is, on Bruno Guimaraes. Scissor kick challenge round the player's leg. Potential leg breaking, in my opinion. It's out of control. It's dangerous. It's excessive force. It just ticks so many boxes for me. This challenge, and I can't quite work out why it wasn't given as a red card. I really can't. When you look at the replays of this challenge and you see it just ticks so many boxes for a red card, and the inconsistency of the officiating, like Anthony Gordon's red is a red all day long. Like I get how anyone could ever argue. I think it was Buvy, the Man City fan, trying to argue that I can't believe the game's gone in this day and age. Can't believe it. That's never a red. He's literally stamped his studs down the back of Van Dijk's leg to the point where he's got 2 fat red lines on the back of his leg. It's a red all day long. It's the definition of a studs up challenge, out of control, excessive force, all that. This as well, though, like it has all the hallmarks of a red card, and I cannot understand why it's not. And this one's a little bit more questionable. But we saw Calvin Bassey penalised in the game against Man United for Fulham with this moment where he kind of threw Mason Mount round. Now, this isn't the same action in that sense, but it highlights like the grappling moment. It highlights the new rules that are in place to start this season where players are holding on to other players. And here I can't help but feel that Gravenberch again is impeding Joe Linton by holding. He's got his arms. His back is practically hugging the guy. It's like he wants to do the Titanic celebration with Joe Linton, and for some reason, there's no interruption here. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? Interaction from the referee. He's looking right at it as well. You can see him. You can see Simon Hooper there, the great Simon Hooper, looking straight at this incident, and still he can see all of it in all of its glory, and no, nothing given. Liverpool are a very, very lucky club. We know this. We talked about this last season. They're an incredibly, incredibly fortunate club in terms of what happens on the football pitch. Purely. What goes on between those 90 minutes, they're an incredibly lucky football club. And I just find myself week in, week out having these moments where I just continue to bring up these things, officiating, decisions. It's demoralising. It really, really is. Anyway, let's go into the Arsenal news and get over ourselves with that stuff. Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Magalhaes both have been called up by Carlo Ancelotti for the latest round of international matches for Brazil. So both of those will be involved in the latest round of matches, which is interesting. No Rodrigo you can see on that list of forwards. Martinelli with the call-up. Rodrigo not included in the list of players that have been called up by the player. Esteval as well, Chelsea's very exciting young player, also amongst those called up. Mateus Cunha and Richarlison. João Pedro all called up from other Premier League clubs. Casemiro, Joe Linton, Lucas Paquetá, Bruno Guimaraes, and Andre Santos, the Chelsea midfielder, also called up as well. Interesting to see so many of them involved there. But from an Arsenal perspective, Gabriel Magalhaes and Martinelli. Interesting that Ederson not on that list there either. Your spots as another potential surprise absentee. And speaking of Brazilians, Gabriel Jesus as well involved in more outside training, posting to his Instagram page this story of him doing some ball work outside. Proper opportunity to see him with the ball outside doing this work. He's working very, very hard to get back, and there's hope that end of the year, last couple of months of the year, is when he's hopefully targeting a potential return to action. So that's also very positive to see as well. So Jesus potentially coming into the group. We don't know how long that Kai Havertz is going to be out for, but it could be that Jesus returns to give Arsenal some depth in that position. Now, Sami Mokbel of the Mail reporting yesterday more clarity around Bukayo Saka and Martin Ødegaard. Sammy's got some very good contacts in on kind of with injury news. And so I have very little reason to doubt this information. On my side of things, I just heard that it wasn't as serious as first feared. And this obviously aligns with what Sammy's putting out, that the expected time that Saka is going to miss is around 3 to 4 weeks, which is obviously very, very positive indeed. There was really strong concern that Saka might be out for a longer period of time than just weeks. But it seems to be just weeks that he'll be missing for. It could be that he returns in time for the game against Manchester City. That would obviously be a very, very beneficial moment to return for Saka. That game is on the 21st of September, between 3 and 4 weeks away. So maybe there's a chance that we see Saka involved in that. He's likely to miss he's going to miss the game against Liverpool. He's probably going to miss the game against Nottingham Forest. He's going to miss all the England games, but maybe he's back for that Man City game. If not, then the next chance to play him is a week after that, which is just over a month away at Newcastle. So although we've got a really tricky start to the season and losing Saka is a big, big blow for the next 3 to 4 weeks, of course, we've got depth now. We've got players who can operate in those positions. We've got Noni Madueke. We've got Max Dowman. We've got Ebereeze, of course, coming in to give us a lot of depth as well. And he's going to make his debut, we expect, at Liverpool at the weekend as well. So lots to be excited about still from an Arsenal point of view. Martin Ødegaard, meanwhile, still in a lot of pain. I was told that he really was in a lot of pain after the game against Leeds at the weekend, and left the game in a bit of a sling to kind of protect his shoulder. He probably should have been brought off earlier, if I'm honest. It's one of those moments where you're like, if he's in pain, someone needs to make the decision for him and take him off. He could do himself more damage if he stays on. We've got depth. We've got players. Probably should have brought him off earlier. And by the way, I do need to hold my hands up. We talked a lot in yesterday's show about Ødegaard coming off after the second goal. Came off after the first goal. That's my mistake. Apologies. I still maintain, of course, it's a different game state when you've taken the lead by that point, and we're bringing on Ethan Waneri. There's more space. You're a goal up. Leeds have got more intention to attack. But yes, that was an error on my part. I'm not perfect, it turns out. But yes, Ødegaard, could there be a chance he returns to Liverpool? We don't yet know. We don't know just yet. So let's wait and see. But there's a chance that he could indeed be involved in the game. Moving into transfer news. Arsenal signed 7 players this summer. Could they yet sign 8 or even 9 players this summer? Arsenal are being linked with Girona fullback Arnau Sanchez, the fullback for the Spanish side, according to Santi Auna, is being linked with around a €10 million move, €8 million plus €2 million in bonuses. 22 years of age, and he's been linked with an exit from Girona for some time. Apparently, he has a €14 million release clause in his contract. Sanchez, but Martinez, sorry, Arnau Martinez, not Sanchez. What did I say Sanchez? It's Martinez. Not. Why have I written Sanchez? Where's that come from? Change that quickly. Arnau Martinez, not Sanchez. I must have been looking at somebody else. See, not perfect. Told you. But he's the player currently being linked with a move to Arsenal from Girona. I can't say I know loads about him. Even my knowledge of La Liga isn't going that deep. But of course, Arsenal did play against Girona last season. But doing a little bit around him, looking at what the Football Talent Scout wrote a couple of years ago when he was kind of breaking onto the scene at 20 years of age. The notes were complete fullback, perfect as a right-sided centre-half, perhaps in a three-man defence, but also, as a right-back, fast and agile, versatile and tactically intelligent, good positioning and anticipation, a tenacious tackler, an excellent technique and ball control, and above-average passing and crossing skills. He is Girona's jewel, is what was described of Arnau Sanchez. So at 20 years of age, very highly rated. But, 2 years later, is that changed? Has he diminished in his kind of value, in what we can expect of him? I think what this does tell us, if Arsenal do this deal, hypothetically, let's just say they push ahead with this, is this an indication of Ben White's situation being worse than we first feared? That's the question I've got, is if Arsenal are pushing for a right-side defender when we've got White, Timber, Mosquera, Saliba, we've got quite a lot of depth there. If we're moving for another right-sided defender, is that an indication that perhaps Ben White's injury is significant? I guess we'll hear from Mikel Arteta this week. But he did say in the last press conference, that he could be in contention. He was talking about Ben White as if he had a chance, although he wasn't in the squad at all. But he was talking about Ben White last week as though there was a chance. Could it be that both of Ben White and Jurrien Timber's injuries, and that the injuries that they've suffered, have given Arsenal a bit of a reason, if you like, to consider bringing in another defender instead, because they want somebody who can cover if there's, somebody that's, if there's something going on that's they're concerned about for the long term. But yes, this Santiago, who is a French-based journalist, and he's the person currently reporting this story at the moment. So we'll have to wait and see if Arsenal end up making a move for the player, and if that's just that link becomes reality. But yeah, Foot Mercato's Santi Ona in France with the story there. He's broken a few stories. He's got a bit of a reputation, but I don't know how realistic this will be. We'll have to wait for some more links around this one in the near future. What is a genuine and without any doubt is that Arsenal are exploring a move for Piero Hincapie. Of course, we spoke about Hincapié on yesterday's show in the morning, and we looked into the idea of Hincapie. I told you that I was aware that Arsenal had been following the player for quite some time. They'd been linked to him for many years, in fact. He's been at Leverkusen for a little while now, but they were interested in him before this summer and into the last couple of years before Andrea Berta arrived at Arsenal. But it is my understanding that Andrea Berta was a big fan of his while he was with Atletico Madrid as well. And so this is very much an interesting story. Fantastic, of course. Brilliant breaking by David Ornstein again. David Ornstein really has been the unequivocal coverer of this window. Yeah, he's been stunning in his reporting, as I've pointed out a number of times, and breaking yet another line. I did enjoy slightly, the irony that, minutes earlier, I think Fabrizio tweeted the exclusive that Spurs have made an offer towards Hincapie, an approach, if you like, to the player. And then minutes later, David Ornstein with the exclusive that Arsenal were working on a deal and the player was keen, more so on the move for the player. And so that was quite amusing. What I will say is that, speaking to a colleague of mine, Alistair Gold, who covers Spurs for Football.London, is that it's his understanding that suggestions that Spurs were after the player or had made an approach to the player are wide of the mark. So in confliction, certainly that's kind of the Tottenham angle, is that they weren't really making an approach, and if there was an approach, it came earlier in the window, that their kind of interest in him it's kind of outdated, if you like. It was more previously that Spurs had an interest in the window, not necessarily late on. And I know it's a great kind of narrative to have the whole second hijack, and I know that we can laugh at Tottenham fans again if we do this, and certainly we will, don't you worry. But it seems the reality is more so that Spurs' interest is a little bit outdated, and that's a bit of a delayed story that came out regarding Tottenham and Hincapie. But from an Arsenal point of view, links into this are great to see. They're really, really good to see. So I'm looking forward to see if indeed Hincapie is a player that we might yet see arrive at Arsenal in the near future. But yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, because it would be a really good signing, I think, to replace Kivior. And that is the other element of this story. Jakub Kivior is a player who, from a personal point of view, I would have loved to have kept. And I think he's a player that offered us a lot. But if Arsenal can get Hincapie in, I'll be honest with you, he is a better player than Kivior. He's a better left back than Kivior. He's a better left-sided centre half than Kivior. He's had an excellent few seasons now with Leverkusen. He was obviously important in their Invincibles campaign. So there's been loads to be really excited about when it comes to this element of the story. So yeah, I hope that Arsenal get this done. It could be that they do it with a loan with an option to buy. I don't know if that will help Arsenal financially. You'd assume certainly that it would. It would certainly be able to help them financially, because if they are, as we are, we're made aware that they are quite close when it comes to financial fair play, and not necessarily profit and sustainability regulations, but specifically UEFA financial fair play. A loan with an obligation would mean that the fee would be more so put onto next year's books, which would really, really help Arsenal. Think about the David Raya loan with that further option or obligation to buy. So, yeah, let's wait and see what happens on that front. But it's good news. Obviously, we're going to see a story drop almost immediately after I finish recording. That's just what happens when we do these shows. But I want to talk to you, of course, about no segue, I'm sorry, today. But NordVPN are, of course, no segue, because I realized that when I was clicking around, I accidentally clicked over to the next slide. So I can't segue today. And sometimes that's fine. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we click buttons that we shouldn't. Maybe we go onto a public Wi-Fi service by accident and we shouldn't have done. Maybe that happens to you sometimes. I don't know. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But something that can protect you on those, of course, platforms where we happen to sometimes go onto a public Wi-Fi service and don't remember that it gives people access sometimes to your data. You need to protect things like that. You need to protect your online persona, your online profile. Everything in our lives these days are online. Everything is. Your whole identity fact practically is. So protect yourselves. Make sure you get a VPN service, because that is a really, really important tool to have. So if you go to nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan. And I highly recommend that you do, because not only do you get 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that as well, but also, of course, if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but if you are unhappy with the service for whatever reason, of course, you are capable of getting that money back guarantee as well, and the 30 days are allowed. But go into the description, nordvpn.com/Gooner. You might need to refresh to see it, but it is there. And yeah, tell us indeed if you got involved with it, because I know a few people messaged me about a month or two ago saying, any more NordVPN sponsors coming up? I'm looking at getting another VPN. Well, you're lucky people. It's there for you. Right, let's go to part 2, shall we? Your questions and more right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show. Thank you so much, as always, for listening and tuning in. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your listenership. If you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with the notifications turned on, that would be great. We try and reach 1,000 likes on the video every single day. So if you could help us out by doing that, that would be really, really appreciated indeed. But we're going to jump to the chat box now. Let's do that, shall we? Let's jump into the chat box and tackle some of your questions. I'd love to try and see. Oh, microphone. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Why does it do that? Why Why does it do that? It makes zero sense. Zero sense. Right. What we're going to do is we're going to start again because I'm going to edit that out of the audio bit. If you're a YouTube listener, you got to listen to that rubbish. If you listen on audio, you don't. Welcome back to part 2 of today's show, where we've had no technical issues at all. And we're going to jump into the chat box now and tackle some of your questions as well. So let's do that. If you haven't dropped a like on the video, though, please make sure that you do. You're talking to us from the Shadow Realm, says Backers. It happens sometimes. It doesn't make any sense to me because it's not like I click anything. I click the halfway. If you've ever used StreamYard, you can save your intros and your credits and all that stuff on the side. And then sometimes it just clicks away to a different microphone. I don't know why. I'll have to get in touch with the service, but it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But anyway, I digress. Clive in the chat. Clive Cott says, has anyone done an analysis on how many injury time winners Liverpool have scored over the past year? To be fair, I remember in 23-4, I think it was, we scored a lot. 23-4, we scored a lot of different we scored a lot of different, like late winners in games, really key moments in fixtures, and I sincerely hope that it's something that we can add more of a string to our bow again. But to be honest, I want to see us kind of putting teams away far earlier than having to rely on late goals. Liverpool, of course, first 2 games of the season, they've scored winners in the 88th minute or later already. They've had an 88th minute goal, a 93rd minute goal, a 111th minute goal, and that's not necessarily sustainable. We hope it's not sustainable. We hope it's not something they can continue to do over and over and over again. I sincerely hope that the luck does run out. It's still going for now. It doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon, but difficult to expect that any further. Cornbread says, I swear I heard somewhere Arsenal have a lot of FFP room this summer. Is this true? And if so, why have we seen so many incomings? You heard about the PSR, that we have room, or had room. But regarding UA for FFP, that is a lot tighter. And I've been very consistent with you all, telling you about the UA for FFP. See, David Ornstein spoke about this at Old Trafford, and I saw a few of you in the replies tagging me in it. And, as I've been pointing out for a while, that has been the case, that financial fair play is definitely a presence for Arsenal to consider. But it was quite an un-Arsenal type move, if you like, to go and get Eze when they knew there was pressure there. But they have to sell. They've got to move some players on now, and certainly it's going to be very busy ends to the window. Mark says, what is the latest possible left-wing acquisition with Rodrigo playing but being subbed early and getting angry and not being called up for the Selecao? Could we get him? I mean, we don't need any more attackers. I'm just going to be very blunt with you all. I don't think we need to sign any more forwards. I'm very happy with how many forwards. The only reason I can see Arsenal going for another wide player is if Martinelli is sold. And so far, I've seen nothing credible to suggest that's going to happen just yet. If there is a late move for Martinelli and a lot of money is brought in, I'd be very surprised if Arsenal didn't first scour the market for a replacement. I'd be shocked if they allowed him to leave without bringing in a replacement first, or, to basically be in line and that deal to go through. So that's kind of where I'm at on the forward front. I don't think we need another forward, personally. I think we have a lot of depth there. We have a lot of players for that area, for all the areas in the forward line this season. We've got obviously Gyökeres, Trossard, and Marino at the moment as potential centre forward options while Havertz is out. We've got Trossard and Martinelli on the left with Madueke potentially as an option there, but more so now Eze, of course, can operate there, who can also play the 10 with Ødegaard, and Winery, who can also play on the right. We've got Saka and Madueke there, and of course Max Down. We've got a lot. If Rodrigo is available on a dry loan deal, and I mean just a loan, no strings attached, maybe a small loan fee, covers the majority of his wages, then that's probably a no-brainer, right? It's probably a no-brainer. I still would be surprised if that happens or emerges. It could, but I'd be surprised. But if it's there, obviously it's a no-brainer. But I just can't see it. Real Madrid have done loan deals in the past. James Rodriguez to Real Madrid, Martin Odegaard to Arsenal, Dani Ceballos to Arsenal. They do loan deals. But if indeed Martinelli was to be sold, and as I say, I've not seen anything credible to suggest that is going to happen. We've heard of interest. We've heard of Saudi clubs being aware of Martinelli, but I've heard nothing to suggest that it's going to be, a significant likely move. We saw Saudi clubs move for Trossard at the end of last summer, but it happened after the window closed, so Arsenal just flat out rejected it. If they do it before the end of the summer and Arsenal are able to bring in a replacement, then maybe. But it's very difficult to see that. So I don't think Arsenal are going to go in for another forward. But I could be proven wrong. I mean, I really have been proven wrong this summer about so much. I thought, 5 or 6 signings, great. I was like 5 or 6, that'd be awesome. We could get 8. We could get 9. I don't think so. But we could end up spending 300 million or committing at least to 300 million plus in a summer window. That's not happened in Arsenal's history ever. We're already breaking records for our spending with the Eze deal. We need to move some players on. That's really important. I hope we're going to do it. I really hope that we're going to see Arsenal this season utilise all the talent that they have brought in and just maximise as much as feasibly possible from that group of players. I think that there is real talent in the depth that they have brought in this summer. And I think that there is an ability that they have got to not just compete in the Premier League, but to compete across competitions. We've got a scenario where if you don't have Saka, you can have Madueke. In fact, I wrote a piece that's gone out this morning on the homegrown 11 that Arsenal could bring in. And I think that we're in a scenario now where if we can play us at 11 full of homegrown players, that shows you the transformation of this club. It shows you the transformation of where we have been and where we have come to. And if you want to give the piece a read in full, feel free. It is on the football.london website. But, when Arteta came in, our homegrown group of players that were considered and had homegrown status, included a very small number. And not necessarily players that we would look to and say, oh, wow. With all due respect, those players were Rob Holding and Callum Chambers. They're the 2 players that we signed at a senior level that were homegrown in the squad when Arteta took over. And then we had players that had come through playing, youth football and had progressed. Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Eddie Nketiah, Joe Willock, Reece Nelson, Bukayo Saka, Hector Bellerin. Bellerin, of course, counted because he'd been at the club for at least 3 years, which means he could gain homegrown status. But that was it. We had Martinelli, who wasn't yet homegrown because he had to be at the club for a little bit longer. Saliba as well, until they were both 21, did they gain that homegrown status. But you can make a homegrown 11 now at Arsenal that is very impressive. Very, very impressive. I don't think... Was Welbeck there? I don't think Welbeck... I think Welbeck was sold before that, wasn't he? I feel like I don't remember Welbeck being at Arsenal when Arteta was here. I thought he left in the summer before Arteta arrived. I could be wrong, but I thought he did. But let me run you through this homegrown 11, right? In goal, David Raya, homegrown player. He's Spanish international, but his time at Blackburn makes him homegrown. Ben White at right back. William Saliba, right-sided centre-half, of course, homegrown player because he got that status. Marley Salmon, of course, exciting young player coming through, left centre-half. Miles Lewis-Skelly at left-back. Declan Rice in a number 6. And I've got 2 kind of attacking 8s, Eze and Nwaneri, in kind of those 2 attacking 8 roles. Saka on the right, Madueke on the left, and Martinelli through the middle. That's quite the impressive 11. That doesn't include Max Dowman, in that group. You could easily put him into that team if you wanted to, quite comfortably. So it shows you kind of where we have been and where we are now as a club. in terms of homegrown talent, English players, English talent, and it's important, I think. I don't want to get all Brexit about it, but I think it's important to, as an English club, to have an English core, of players and have that presence as well. I think Arsenal in particular, Arsenal, there's a real synergy with Arsenal and the England national team over the length of its existence. And, for a while, we really lost that. There was periods of time where the England squad didn't have too many Arsenal players, if any, in it. Now, we've got Ben White, who's an England international. We've got Declan Rice, who's an England international. We've got Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's an England international. We've got Saka. We've got Madueke. We've got Eze. Potentially Ethan Nwaneri one day can get into, a bit of senior action in the of the team. So having all of these players, I think, is a real positive sign about the growth of a team. As an English club, if you're seeing plenty of your squad getting into the England national side, it's a very, very good sign about where your squad is. And if you're an English club that's not necessarily getting too many England players into the squad, I think it can be a bit of a signal that, things aren't necessarily going as well. And Soup says the England team could be built around Arsenal players now. And he's absolutely right. You could theoretically, the England national side with Kane up top could have 3 Arsenal players providing for him in Saka, Madueke, and Eze. You could have those 3 players behind Kane quite comfortably in the near future. And it wouldn't surprise me if we did have that. With Declan Rice in the midfield and Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back. England don't have too many left backs at the moment, so Lewis-Skelly's got a real chance. And even Ben White getting into the side potentially, if indeed he can get fit, and that's the big question around him. So I look forward to that. Ian says, do Arsenal have to change the way they play to win the league, given the game last night? The league, given with such intensity, aggression, and speed, Arsenal don't seem to play that way. I think we certainly do play with aggression. I think we're certainly playing with a level of intensity that's gone up from last season. And I think I've noticed a remarkable difference in the aggression and the intensity and the speed at which we're playing this season. I think there's a marked difference from last season already in what we're seeing in the first 2 opening games. It's a bit of a refreshing feeling. Prashant says, following the Eze deal, Transfermarkt ranks Arsenal second behind only Real Madrid in terms of squad market value worldwide. If we sign Hincapie, we could move to number 1. I know some people will look at that and say, well, look at what Arteta's got. But actually, it's look what Arteta's built. Look what Arsenal have built. A lot of that squad value comes from players that were nowhere near that level of value when they first started playing for Arsenal or first interacted with the squads. Think about the value that Arsenal have built in Saka and in Miles Lewis-Skelly and in Ethan Nwaneri and in Saliba and in David Raya, in players that have improved so much. Martinelli signed for £5 million, which is, I think he's in the top 10 most valuable wide players in the world on Transfermarkt at the moment. Left wingers anyway, or even, I'm pretty sure it's left wingers he is. Eze coming in. I think we've had some real bargains. Ødegaard, £32 million we bought him for. £32 million for Martin Ødegaard. What a bargain that was. Gabriel, 25 mil. Saliba, 27 mil. We've really spent so smartly at times on players. Even David Raya, like 30 million quid, 27 plus 3 for the loan deal that we had as well. The squad we've spent a lot on it. There's no doubt about that. Over $1 billion in spend, I think there is since Arteta took over. But the value of that squad is way more than what we actually spent on it, for me. The value of the group. If you add up all the transfer fees of all the players currently in Arsenal's squad, I think the squad value would be significantly higher. And that comes as a result of very smart recruitment. And that's why, people slam Edu, or really slam Edu as a sporting director. And he wasn't perfect. And he did make mistakes. And there were things that I don't agree with how it went down. I don't agree at all with how he left. But in part, I'm kind of glad now that he did, because of obviously with Andrea Berta coming in and the work that he has done. And we've kind of seen what a real top world-class sporting director can do. But you have to give the flowers to Edu for helping build that squad that we got to this point. And it's like Edu has built it to here. Andrea Berta has taken that and he's taken it to the next step. And now it's on Arteta to use that squad to go and win things. And there is a real expectation about winning things at Arsenal this season. So it's a really good point, Prashant. 11 Mod says, and yet there are no guarantees for a title. Margins are so small and competition is fierce. Would you be Arteta out if we go another season trophyless? For me, it depends on the circumstance. Well, I think you answered your own question there, 11 Mod. Like when I did TalkSport earlier in the season, Andy Goldstein was really pushing me. He was like, if you have the same season you had last season, does he go? And it's like, it's so difficult to sit there in August and be like, oh, he has to go. And I know they're looking for the clip. I know they're looking for and I got tagged in with the headline of he has, if he wins nothing or whatever, it was always going to happen. I knew what was going on. I'm not an idiot. But this idea that we ask the question, like, if he wins nothing, he has to go. We always want ultimatums. We always want, like, something to refer back to, the statement a year in advance, 8 months in advance. We always want, like, a statement so we can refer back to it. I've said this a million times, and I'll keep saying it. If you are one of the very tiny percentages of football fans in the world that can go into a season knowing that your club is one of the very, very, very few that has a chance of winning the title, you're an incredibly privileged supporter. You're in a very privileged position as a fan because the vast majority of football clubs and subsequently their supporters do not have that privilege. Do not have that privilege at all. And we go into every season currently with the privilege of supporting a team that has grown and built and raised itself back up to being into a position where we go into a campaign as a club that are going, we could win this. We could win this. There's never a will win this about it. You have your favourites. I think Liverpool will win it. I think they will. But I don't know they will. And that's the difference. I think they're favourites for me. Arsenal currently top, which is great, on goal difference and all that. And we look probably the best side so far. I think if you look at all the teams in the league currently, Arsenal have probably been the most impressive. To come my way with that win at Old Trafford, it showed grit, determination, defensive solidity. It showed tenacity. It showed clinicalness in our set pieces. It shows how dangerous we could be from them. We did create great turnovers. We didn't really utilize those turnovers. And then on the flip side of that, you play a team that we should beat, that we failed to do so many times last season, and you turn them over 5-0. Despite losing Saka, despite losing Odegaard in the game, despite not having Ben White, despite not having Kai Havertz, despite not having Jesus, despite not having Norgard, despite not having all these players that are out injured or getting injured in games, we're still turning teams over. And so I think right now, as of August 26th, Arsenal have looked the best team in the league so far, for me. Spurs are not annoyingly a close second, but I would say along with that is that Spurs always do this. They always have a really good start and then they just flitter away. So don't be surprised at Tottenham's beginning into the campaign because they always get into these positions where they're like, oh, look how good Spurs are. Are Spurs title challengers? No, they're not. They're Spurs. So it's not going to happen. It always happens that they sit there at the beginning of a campaign looking very, very good. But no, it's very different. Moabi says, Tom, how can you back Liverpool despite believing that we could take it? What do you mean? I don't understand the question, Moabi. I'm sorry. Bazza says, we have no divine right to win anything. All I ever wanted was us to compete, and we are, and then some. I'm confident trophies will come this season. Boy says, only seen bits of last night's second half. Where did the 11 minutes added time come from? It came from a lot of injuries. I don't have an issue with 11 added minutes. I know a lot of people have taken issue with that. My issue with the game is, A, how Newcastle decided to see it out. B, the red card challenge by Gravenberch in 8 minutes into the game. And C, the penalty challenge on Joe Linton by Gravenberch in the second half. Like, those things for me, that's what I take issue with, not with the added time. AJ says, when Wrighty gets his statue, what pose time do you think they will capture? I think his status as an Arsenal legend has grown and has been cemented post his career. Like, he was already a legend. And I want to bring something else up, by the way. I don't know if you saw on X yesterday, but Paul Merson took to X yesterday because he felt the need to publish a video explaining why he's a Chelsea fan. Now, Paul Merson has been a Chelsea fan since he was a little kid. He's always been a Chelsea fan. He's grown up a Chelsea fan. And the fact that some Arsenal fans, I'm going to make a generalization here, which I don't like doing, but I'm almost certain that those Arsenal fans among our group that are of an older generation and that watched Paul Merson week in, week out, make over 400 appearances for Arsenal, help them win trophies, help them win titles, help them end that horrible streak, help them win at Anfield in 1989. I think our experienced, wiser Arsenal cohort of fans absolutely are in no way or anywhere close to making these horrible comments towards Paul Merson. I honestly think it's of a generation that are younger and didn't see Paul Merson, but watch Paul Merson as a pundit. Now, Merce can be quite critical of Arsenal sometimes, and he can be obviously very praising of Chelsea at times. He's a Chelsea fan. It happens. I'm guilty of being a little biased now and again. I'm an Arsenal fan. At the end of the day, he is an Arsenal legend. And just because he's a Chelsea fan doesn't mean that he's not an Arsenal legend. He could not, when he's being, when he's talking about Arsenal in more general terms and not talking about them as a pundit, he is incredibly respectful, praising, appreciative, and loving of Arsenal. He cannot speak more highly of Arsenal, Paul Merson, when talking about them as a club. From a personal perspective, I find it mad that any Arsenal fan who knows their history, any Arsenal fan who knows genuinely what Arsenal Football Club is, would have any issue with one of our former players being a fan of another team. They're not you and me. Some of them are. Eberezer is a great example. He is a bit like you and me, or he loves this club as a fan. But not all players are like that. And I think people sometimes conflate the idea that if you're a player for Arsenal, you love the club like we love the club. You can't expect that of someone. You just can't. What you can expect of them is them to give their 100% for Arsenal, to give everything they have to this club while they're here and while they're paid by Arsenal to be a player. But you can't expect them to be like you and me for the most part, because they're not. You can't expect them to have little subconscious biases if they're in their post-career talking about Arsenal. You can't expect that. So to expect that of Paul Merson, I'm sorry, is just not acceptable. And so I absolutely empathise with why Paul put that message out. I don't necessarily think that it helped the situation always, because I think he would have got a lot of stick, but it seems a lot of love did come his way. And so maybe he was right to post it. But certainly, and I'll retweet the tweet on my TGT account if you want to go and see it, if you're a follower of us over there. But yeah, I just want to point that out just because it was kind of a nice link into the Wrighty question. But Wrighty absolutely should have a statue. I have no doubt that one day he will be recognised for his work for the club, both during his time as a player and post-playing career as well. He absolutely deserves that. There's part of me that kind of hopes that it could be something of a dual statue that depicts Wrighty during his playing days, but also depicts Wrighty in the cheerful chappy of punditry that he was after it as well. So yeah, I kind of hope that there's a little bit of a double meaning, if you like, to Wrighty, because I think there is a double view there's two views of Wrighty. There's the player, there's the pundit, the lover of Arsenal, the fan. I won't call it the pundit. There's the player and there's the fan, I think, of Arsenal when it comes to Wrighty. So yeah, I sincerely hope that they do recognise him for his playing and post-playing career for sure. So I kind of hope it's a half-half situation of somehow incorporating both elements of his time with us. Salami says, or maybe it's Salami, says, Tom, do you think Eze will be in the starting position against Liverpool? I think it depends on Odegaard. I think there's potential for Eze, potential to go straight into the 11. He's fit. He's been playing for Palace. There's no reason he shouldn't. So certainly, I think there's potential for him to do just that. Gary says, why is the narrative Newcastle must sell Isak? We were told that he's not for sale. We respected that. Liverpool were told the same and didn't respect that, but nothing is said that Liverpool behaved poorly. I don't think Liverpool have behaved poorly at all, Gary, to be honest. They've bid for the player. They bid too low. I think some people have pointed out that was a bit of a low, arguably disrespectful bid. It was like 40 million below the asking price. People have pointed that out, Gary, personally. I've seen plenty of people pointing out that. But I don't think either clubs really have acted in any other way than they would for anything. So I don't necessarily agree with you, Gary. I don't think there's been any difference in either of the way the two clubs have been viewed about the Isak thing. Arsenal never even went into the Isak race this summer. It wasn't something that they saw as a viable, realistic option for them because they wanted to do other business. They probably could have maybe afforded to sign Isak. It turns out the money that we've spent, we could have signed him. But we all know that we needed to spend more broadly. We needed to spend on loads of different areas, not just the centre forward. And I mean, would I rather spend 150 million on Isak or 150 million on Gyökeres, Eza, Mosquera, Norgard, and Kepa? I think I know the answer. I think I'd rather spend on the 5 than the 1, personally. So that's where I'd sit on that front, anyway, at least. Simple Unity says Darren Bent, for example, didn't play for Arsenal, but he's an Arsenal fan. He's a great example, and I've got a lot of time for Benty and his views, and I think that maybe he gets a bit of stick, obviously, from Arsenal fans because he used to play for Spurs, but there's a lot of Arsenal fans who did play for Spurs. Eza nearly went to Spurs because Arsenal didn't move in for him. So would it have made me think any less of him? No, he wouldn't have moved there because Arsenal didn't. I don't think any less of Cesc Fabregas for going to Chelsea. I know some Arsenal fans do. I think Cesc Fabregas was well within his rights to make that move. He waited for Arsenal. Arsenal had a first refusal on the deal. Arsene Wenger turned around and said, "We've got Mesut Ozil. We don't need you." Chelsea wanted him. Could offer him Premier League, Champions League football at a high level. He went there. I've got no issue with Cesc Fabregas playing for Chelsea. Absolutely none whatsoever. I think the same goes for Aubameyang. I don't necessarily have an issue with Aubameyang. The issues I've got with Aubameyang are not because he played for Chelsea; they're because of his behaviour as captain. So for me, it's not really about who you go and play for. I have an issue with Robin van Persie, and I have an issue with Samir Nasri, and I have to an extent an issue with Fabregas for his move to Barcelona. Those are players that I would, for those actions in particular. Ashley Cole is another example, I think, as well. The manner of their exits from Arsenal, that's a difference. There's a difference there. Bakary Sagna, do I have as much of an issue with Sagna moving to Man City? His contract came to an end, given Arsenal a long period of service. I'm not necessarily with Sagna. Adebayor, again, when he left, I didn't necessarily have too much of a problem with it. I had a problem with it over his behaviour after he left and the celebration he did to Arsenal fans. But Van Persie and Nasri, there's a sense that, in my view, they left Arsenal at a time where they were really needed. And I know Arsenal needed money and we sold those players to bring in money, but they left for me at a time that they really needed. Koscielny, I've got an issue with the way Koscielny left Arsenal. He was club captain, helped us end our trophy drought, scored in that cup final, had effectively secured, in some ways, legendary status by helping us win that FA Cup, scoring in that cup final against Hull City. But the manner in which he left was just unacceptable. And it was unnecessary. It was totally unnecessary as well from Koscielny, the way that he left Arsenal and went to Bordeaux. The announcement video where he kind of took the shirt off and revealed another shirt underneath, the way in which he refused to play, he was captain. He was captain of the... You can't, in my opinion, behave that way. So there's issues with those. They're players I've got issues with. But our younger fans might not remember Koscielny's announcement video for Bordeaux, but it was quite the sight. It's fair to say. It was quite the moment. And it's probably why you've never really heard or seen much of Koscielny around Arsenal ever since he did leave. Because I think Bridges, unfortunately, he burned bridges when he left. He could have, all he needed to do was carry on playing, wait for an offer, wait for Arsenal to accept an offer, and he could go. But he didn't. He really forced the move as a leader in the group, and it just wasn't the way to go about it. Maybe there's more to the story than we're aware, and until that point, we have this opinion. Until we have more of the information about the story, I guess we won't know. But or if anyone could offer it up, and I haven't seen it. But yeah, there's just moments, there's times in people's careers where you just got to turn around and be like, there's ways to do things, and there are ways not to do things, and that was a way not to do a thing. So that's the way it works for me. Benny says Fabrizio's been talking about Arnau Martinez. He says, I see many questions of Arnau. I've realised I've put Sanchez in the video title as well. How have I done? Why have I got Sanchez stuck in my head? Absolutely no idea. Martinez. Let's change those. Lovely job. I see many questions on Arnau Martinez, the fullback from Helena. What I'm hearing is that Arsenal are not working on that deal at this stage. Arsenal's focus is on Piero Hincapie, who I really hope, just let's bring this conversation full circle, by the way. What are your thoughts about the Hincapie thing? Because it's an interesting one. Kivior goes, which sucks because I think he was a really important player. But if we get an upgrade, and I look at Hincapie definitely as an upgrade on Kivior, without a doubt, he's a better left back. He's a better left centre half, in my opinion. He's very good from set pieces. He's got speed, power, pace. He's a good passer of the ball. It's a really interesting signing. But I tell you what, there's definitely a question mark about what it does for Miles Lewis-Skelly. And there's a question mark about Calafiori as well. He is that good of a player, Hincapie, that you're adding quality, real quality. So what are your thoughts about this as a deal? If we're going to replace Kivior, you bring in somebody in Hincapie who potentially could cost Arsenal upwards of 50 million quid next summer if they get a loan with an obligation to buy. Arsenal want to do a deal much lower than that, apparently, my understanding of that is, but negotiations are ongoing. The player has definitely said yes, he really does want the move and hopes that Leverkusen will help agree a figure. Leverkusen as well have already made a lot of money this summer in terms of player sales, so there's an indication from them, I think, that they would be open to a loan with an obligation to get the money on their books for next season. So it's a deal that could work for all parties, but Arsenal need to negotiate down the overall figure. Elliot says, totally with Hincapie, potential deal. He looks a serious player. And Raditya says, Kivior and Zini leaving and we get Hincapie in, this would allow Skelly to move into midfield. It's not a bad point of view, to be fair. Shunita says, Kivior goes, Hincapie and Mosquera are upgrades. They definitely are. I mean, Hincapie and Mosquera are definitely upgrades on Kivior and Tomiyasu. Definitely. It's about pushing the needle, That's what we've been asking for all summer. So yeah, I think that's very, very. It's a very good point. Super High says, "What's the number surrounding a deal for Hincapie? I hear Kivior is going for around 30 million. I mean, we'd be lucky to get 30 million pounds. It seems it could be close to 25 if we're lucky. So Arsenal would be spending potentially double that figure next summer on Hincapie. So it would be a loan with an obligation. That's the idea of it. For him says, now that we have Eze and a possible replacement lineup for Kivior, do you feel like we have the most complete squad in the league? I mean, the most well-rounded squad, definitely. If Eze comes in, if Hincapie comes in, we'd have one of the most well-rounded, the deepest squads in the league, for sure. But again, we're still suffering with significant injuries, so that does limit things. Jay says, to play devil's advocate, could there be a case that we know for sure Kivior can play in the Prem and played well in the Champions League, whilst there's a risk Hincapie might not as adjust as well? Definitely worth raising. And I guess it's a point of view that we won't really know an answer to until we see him play. Gary says, Hincapie is a serious upgrade on Kivior. My only issue is the price that we get for Kivior. I think Lewis Skelly will be added to midfield and won't be played as much at left back. And Christian said it wouldn't be an Arteta window without a left back signing. It's very true. And says, I think the Hincapie deal is brilliant because he would be our best left back given the fact that we might use Eze on the left wing. He's more like, people talk about a traditional kind of left back. When he plays left back, he plays more traditionally. He plays more like a traditional left back when he plays there, but he can play left centre half as well. I know we've seen Tierney do that. But he plays he can play that role very well. So his stats speak for themselves when you look at him against fullbacks, playing, his passing is 96th percentile, 94th percentile for attempted and 96th for completed, 95th for pass completion. He's in the 90s for medium pass distances. He's got 80 for pass completed in the long distances. Pass into the final third, 5.2, the 92nd percentile in Europe's top 5 leagues for fullbacks. Shot creating actions. Sure, shots that lead to another shot. He takes shots, 92nd percentile for them. Quite incredible. He's a very good blocker of shots. He's in the 99th percentile for that. He loves to get on the ball. He's in the 95th percentile for touches. He's very good on the ball. He's in the 95th percentile for carries. He's 95th percentile for progressive carrying distance. He's not tackled all that often. He's in the 78th percentile for times tackled during a take-on. He's great in the air. 97th percentile for aerial duels being 1. And 90th for the percentage of those aerial duels being 1 as well. So 97th for passes received. He gets on the ball. He moves the ball. He's good in the air. He's good from set pieces. He's a threat. He adds a lot. If Arsenal can get this deal done, they've added a very, very good defender. He's 23 as well. He's 23 years old. He's by far a very good addition to the squad and an exciting one as well. So keep those fingers crossed. We've been going for an hour now. I'm going to hop off. I've got to go play some golf. But thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.